The room was dark and cold. A single light hung from the ceiling, swinging slowly, casting long shadows on the metal walls. Lyra sat chained to a cold steel table, her wrists locked in glowing restraints that hummed softly. The air smelled of burnt metal and something sharp, like chemicals. Her head ached, and every breath felt heavy. She could hear the distant hum of the alien warship's engines. Deep and endless, across from her stood two tall Zynth guards, their insect-like eyes watching her without emotion. They wore dark armor that reflected the dim light, and their clawed hands twitched as they spoke in their rough, hissing language. Lyra understood some of their words, enough to know they wanted the location of the resistance base. Her people had been fighting the Zynth for years, and now she was their prisoner. She kept her eyes steady, refusing to speak. One of the guards stepped forward and placed a strange device on the table. It was a small metal sphere, covered in glowing red lines. The device began to hum, and the air around it seemed to vibrate. Lyra felt a sharp pain in her chest, as if invisible claws were digging into her heart. She bit her lip to stop herself from screaming. In the corner of the room, chained to the wall, sat another prisoner, a human man named Ethan. He had been captured weeks ago during a failed mission. His wrists were bruised from the heavy cuffs, and his face was marked with cuts. He watched in silence, his jaw tight. He didn't know this alien woman, but he could see the pain in her eyes. The device's hum grew louder, and Lyra's breathing became uneven. The heart monitor on the wall showed her pulse racing. The guards leaned closer, their voices colder, asking the same question again. Lyra's vision blurred. The humming turned into a high-pitched scream inside her head. Then, all at once, her body went still. The monitor gave one long, flat beep. Ethan's eyes widened. He had seen death before, but something about this felt wrong. The guards exchanged glances and laughed in their hissing tones. They thought the problem was over. They didn't care that the prisoner had died. Ethan looked at her lifeless body. Her chest was not moving. Her skin was turning pale. Something inside him stirred a memory of the battlefield, of comrades who had fallen and those he couldn't save. This time, he told himself, it would be different. The guards turned off the device and started talking to each other. They were distracted. Ethan leaned forward, testing the strength of his cuffs. He had been working on loosening them for days, using a small shard of metal he had hidden under the collar of his shirt. Now was his chance. The shard scraped against the lock, making a faint clicking sound. His hands trembled, but not from fear, from urgency. Every second Lyra stayed dead. Her chances of coming back faded. Finally, with a small snap, the cuff on his right wrist came loose. He pulled his arm free, then quickly freed the other. He glanced at the guards. They were still busy, their backs half turned. Quietly, he moved toward Lyra. Her head was tilted to one side, her hair falling over her face. He touched her neck, no pulse. His jaw clenched. He knew the ship had medical pods in the lower decks. If he could get her there, maybe, just maybe, he could save her. The room seemed smaller now, the air heavier. The guards shifted, and Ethan froze. One of them looked his way but didn't notice anything. Ethan waited until they turned again, then lifted Lyra's limp body into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, fragile in a way that made him even more determined. The door to the chamber was half open. Ethan slipped through, moving quickly but silently. The corridor outside was dim, lined with strange alien symbols glowing faintly. He kept his head down, listening for footsteps. Somewhere deep in the ship, alarms could start any second. He had to move fast. As he carried her, he could feel the faint coldness of her skin through his torn sleeves. Her head rested against his shoulder, and her hair brushed his cheek. He didn't know why he cared so much about saving her. She wasn't human. She wasn't his ally. But in this moment, none of that mattered. Ethan's mind raced. He remembered the layout of the ship from when he had been dragged through it as a prisoner. 2 corridors down, then a left turn. The med bay should be there if it hadn't been moved. He picked up his pace, his boots silent on the metal floor behind him. The sound of the guards' voices suddenly stopped. Ethan didn't look back. He knew they would notice her missing at any moment, and when they did, they would come for him. But for now, he focused on one thing, reaching the med bay before. It was too late. Ethan moved quickly through the dim corridor, every step feeling heavier than the last. Lyra's lifeless body was still in his arms, her head resting against his shoulder. He could feel the cold through her skin. A chilling reminder that time was running out. The hum of the alien warship's engines vibrated through the walls, steady and deep, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. He had been on missions before. He had faced fire, smoke, and blood. But never like this. This was not about orders. This was not about winning a battle. This was about a choice. A voice inside his head told him to let her go. She was not human. She was part of a species that might have been his enemy. Helping her would bring the Zynth's fury down on him. But another voice, deeper and sharper, told him he couldn't just watch her die. He remembered the faces of soldiers he couldn't save back on Earth. He remembered the quiet, empty silence after their breathing stopped. He had promised himself long ago that he would never walk away again. The corridor bent to the left, and he pressed his back to the wall. 2 Zynth guards walked past the far end, their armor clinking softly. He held his breath until they were gone. He was running out of time and running out of luck. Somewhere behind him, he thought he heard the metallic slam of the interrogation chamber door. They would find her missing. They would find him gone. The hunt would begin. He shifted Lyra's weight in his arms and whispered, "Stay with me," even though he knew she could not hear him. Her hair fell across her face, and he gently brushed it away with his fingers. For a moment, he thought he saw her eyelids twitch. But it was only his mind playing tricks. The medbay was still 2 corridors away. If his memory was correct, he had seen it once, when the Zynth had dragged a wounded human soldier past him. It had glowing tanks, medical pods shaped like eggs, and machines that seemed to heal with light instead of tools. Ethan didn't know how to use alien technology. He didn't know their language, their commands, their symbols. But he knew one thing: if he could just get her inside one of those pods, there was a chance, and a chance was better than nothing. His legs burned from carrying her, but he refused to slow down. Every corner felt like it could be the one where guards appeared. Every sound felt sharper, louder, as if the ship itself was watching him. The air was warmer here, carrying a faint metallic tang. Somewhere far above, he heard a deep echoing thud, maybe a door locking, maybe a ship-wide alert. He kept moving, faster now. The last corridor to the medbay stretched before him, lined with strange glowing panels. He could see the door at the far end, a curved arch of silver metal with a blue light pulsing above it. But as he stepped forward, a low growl echoed from behind a nearby bulkhead. Ethan froze. From the shadows stepped a Zynth hound, its body sleek and insectoid, its mouth filled with jagged teeth. Its eyes glowed a deep orange, locking onto him. He had no weapon, no time, and no room to run. The creature took a slow step forward, its claws scraping the floor. Ethan's heart pounded. He shifted Lyra's weight to one arm, his other hand curling into a fist. He didn't know if he could fight and win, but he knew he would not drop her. The hound's growl deepened, and for a moment, they stared at each other. Then, from far down the corridor, a sharp metallic sound rang out, distracting the creature. It turned its head for a fraction of a second. Ethan took that chance, running past as fast as he could. The medbay door was just ahead now. He slammed his hand against the glowing panel. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the door slid open with a hiss, and he stepped inside. The room was lit with a strange white glow, the air warm and humming with unseen energy. Rows of alien pods stood against the walls, each filled with a faint mist. Ethan laid Lyra gently into one of them, his hands shaking. Her chest did not rise. Her pulse was still gone. He looked at the alien controls, dozens of glowing symbols staring back at him. He didn't know which button to press, but he knew this was the only moment left. And so, with A deep breath, he made his decision. He would bring her back, no matter the cost. The med bay filled with a soft pulsing light. Mist swirled inside the pod where Lyra lay, her face pale and still. Ethan stood over the controls, his fingers hovering over glowing alien symbols. He didn't understand the language, but his gut told him to press the largest symbol in the center. The moment he touched it, the pod came to life with a low hum. A beam of blue light washed over Lyra's body, scanning her from head to toe. For a second, nothing happened. Then her chest twitched, just a small, weak movement. Ethan leaned closer, hope flickering in his eyes. The pod's hum grew louder, its mist thicker. A faint, slow heartbeat appeared on a small holographic display above her. But before he could even breathe in relief, the room erupted with sound. A piercing alarm screamed through the med bay. Red lights flashed along the walls, painting everything in a blood-colored glow. Somewhere deep in the ship, heavy footsteps began to echo. The Zynth had found out. Someone had broken into the med bay. Ethan's pulse quickened. He knew he had only seconds before the guards arrived. The pod's process wasn't complete. Pulling her out now could kill her. Leaving her inside meant he'd be trapped when they came. His mind raced. He glanced around and spotted a narrow service hatch on the far wall. It was small, barely large enough for him to crawl through while carrying her, but it might be his only escape. The sound of the footsteps grew louder. The ship's metal floor trembled under their weight. Ethan looked back at Lyra, her lips parted slightly, a weak breath escaping. He whispered, "Come on, fight through this." The pod's display showed her heartbeat growing stronger, though still faint. The door to the med bay hissed. Ethan's head snapped toward it. The silver metal slid open, revealing two armored Zynth guards with glowing rifles. They saw him instantly. One raised his weapon. The other barked in their guttural tongue. Without thinking, Ethan slammed his hand on the pod's emergency release. The pod's front shell opened with a sharp hiss, releasing a wave of mist. Ethan grabbed Lyra, feeling the slight rise and fall of her chest. It was enough she was alive. He sprinted toward the service hatch, the guards shouting behind him. A plasma blast slammed into the wall inches from his head, showering sparks. He ducked low and dove into the hatch, dragging her with him. The tunnel beyond was narrow and dark. Pipes hissed with steam, and the air smelled of hot metal. Ethan crawled as fast as he could, the sound of the guards' boots clanging behind him. One of them tried to follow into the hatch. Ethan heard claws scraping on the metal as the alien struggled to fit. The tight space gave him an advantage. Only one could follow at a time. He twisted down a side shaft, moving deeper into the belly of the ship. Dim lights flickered above, casting moving shadows across the walls. He didn't know where this tunnel led, but he knew one thing: it was taking him away from the med bay, and away from capture. Lyra's breathing was still uneven. Her head rested against his arm, and in the faint light, her eyes fluttered open for half a second before closing. Again, that single flicker of consciousness was enough to push him forward harder. He wasn't just running now, he was protecting something worth risking his life for. Somewhere ahead, the tunnel split in two directions. From the left came the faint sound of rushing air. From the right came silence. He chose the left, knowing that airflow usually meant an exit behind him. The guards' voices echoed in the tunnel. They were close. The air around him grew cooler. He turned one last corner and saw a grated vent with pale light shining through. Ethan crawled faster, kicked the vent open, and climbed out into a shadowy storage bay. The room was filled with alien crates, towering high like a maze. He ducked between them, his boots silent on the floor. Somewhere beyond these walls was freedom, but he knew this was only the beginning of the chase. Asterisk. The storage bay was silent, except for the faint hum of the ship's engines. Ethan crouched behind a stack of alien crates, his breath steady, but fast. Lyra lay in his arms, her skin still pale, her breathing slow and shallow. She was alive, but barely. The narrow escape through the maintenance tunnels had bought him time, but not much. He knew the Zynth would sweep the area soon, and once they found this bay, there would be nowhere left to hide. He set her down gently on a crate. Her eyes fluttered open for a second, a faint light in their silver hue. She tried to speak, but only a weak rasp came out. Ethan knelt beside her. "You're not safe yet," he whispered, "but I'm not leaving you." She didn't understand his words, but her gaze softened before slipping back into unconsciousness. That's when he noticed it, on the far wall of the storage bay, half hidden behind a row of sealed containers. A smaller, portable medical pod. It looked older than the one in the med bay. Its metal scratched and its lights dim, but it was powered. Humming faintly like a sleeping machine. It was risky. He didn't know if it worked, or if using it here would send another alert. But moving her again without stabilizing her might kill her. The choice was simple. He had to gamble. Ethan dragged the pod out from behind the crates. Its surface was cold under his fingers, and alien markings ran across it like strange veins. He opened the lid, revealing a narrow chamber lined with soft, glowing panels. It was just big enough for her. He lifted Lyra inside, her body sinking into the padded interior. Her hand twitched weakly, brushing against his arm. For a moment, he froze, feeling the fragile strength in that touch. He ran his eyes over the pod's control panel. Most of the symbols meant nothing to him, but he noticed a small icon, the same shape as the central button from the med bay's machine. It had worked once, and right now, that was the only hope he had. He pressed it, and the pod came to life with a soft hum. Faint blue light filled the chamber, washing over Lyra's face. Her breathing grew a little stronger. The pod's display showed slow but steady progress. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding, but the moment of relief didn't last. Somewhere outside the storage bay, heavy boots pounded against the deck. The guards were here. He had a choice: stay by her side and risk being caught, or draw them away and give her more time. His instincts screamed to protect her directly, but his training told him the smarter move was to make himself the target. If the Zynth captured him, they might leave the pod alone long enough for it to finish its work. Ethan reached into the corner of the bay and found a loose metal rod. It was no rifle, but it could break bones in close quarters. He stepped away from the pod and into the shadows. The door to the bay slid open with a hiss. 2 Zynth guards entered, their rifles raised. Scanning the crates, Ethan waited until they were close. Then he moved fast, silent, and precise. The first guard never saw him coming. Ethan swung the rod hard, striking its weapon and sending it clattering to the floor. Before it could recover, Ethan drove his shoulder into its chest, knocking it back into the wall. The second guard roared and fired, the plasma shot missing by inches. Ethan ducked behind a crate, the air around him sizzling with heat from the blast. He didn't need to win this fight. He just needed to buy time. The pod hummed softly behind him, its blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. Every second he could keep the guards away might mean the difference between life and death for Lyra. The plasma blast scorched the crate beside Ethan, sending shards of smoking metal to the floor. The guards' guttural voices echoed through the storage bay. Sharp and impatient, Ethan moved quickly, weaving between stacks of alien cargo, the metal rod still in his hand. His goal wasn't to kill, only to keep them from reaching Lyra's pod. Behind him, the hum of the machine was steady, its blue light still pulsing like a fragile heartbeat. One guard circled left, the other right, closing the gap. Ethan ducked behind a container, listening to the heavy clicks of their armored boots. He needed another distraction, something loud enough to draw them away. His eyes darted to a stack of cylindrical canisters with glowing seams. They looked dangerous. He didn't know what was inside, but his gut told him it would explode if hit hard enough. Before he could act, a new sound filled the bay. A faint hiss, followed by a sharp, metallic thump. One of the guards turned toward the noise just as something small rolled across the floor. A sphere the size of a fist, glowing faint green. It stopped between the two guards. In an instant, it burst into a wave of bright, blinding light. The Zynth roared, Clutching their faces as if the light burned their eyes, Ethan blinked hard, his vision clearing just enough to see 3 shadowy figures drop down from the ventilation shafts above. They moved fast, silent, their bodies covered in dark armor marked with silver symbols he didn't recognize. One of them landed beside Ethan, holding a sleek alien pistol. The figure's voice was calm but firm. "Human, if you want to live, follow us." Ethan didn't move right away. His first instinct was to protect the pod. "I'm not leaving her," he said, his voice sharp. The armored figure tilted their head, then looked toward the pod. Without hesitation, they sprinted across the bay, firing at the staggering Zynth guards. The other 2 figures moved to cover them, their shots precise and deadly, in seconds. Both guards were on the ground, alive but unconscious. The first figure knelt beside the pod, scanning it quickly with a wrist-mounted device. "This tech is old but functional," they said. "She'll survive if we move her now." Ethan hesitated. "Move her where?" The figure looked up, their visor reflecting the pod's blue glow. "To our ship," they replied. "We're not Zynth, we're their enemies." For the first time since the torture chamber, Ethan felt a thin thread of hope. The strangers worked fast, lifting the pod with ease despite its weight. Ethan stayed close, his eyes never leaving Lyra's pale face. Her breathing was steadier now, and the faint color in her cheeks told him the pod was working. Still, she remained unconscious, unaware of the chaos around her. The group moved through a hidden side passage behind the storage bay. Ethan kept his grip on the metal rod, just in case. As they walked, he studied the symbols on the stranger's armor. They were nothing like Zynth markings, curved, flowing, almost like rivers etched in silver. Whoever these people were, they fought differently, moved differently, and they hadn't killed him on sight, which was already more mercy than most aliens had shown him. They reached a docking hatch, its doors sealed tight. One of the rebels tapped a code into the panel. The door slid open, revealing a small but fast-looking ship, its hull marked with the same silver patterns. Inside, the air was warmer, smelling faintly of oil and strange herbs. The pod was secured near the wall, still humming softly. Ethan stepped inside last, glancing over his shoulder at the long, empty corridor they had come from. Somewhere back there, the Zynth would be regrouping, and when they came again, they would not come lightly. The hatch sealed, and the ship's engines roared to life. For now they were moving away from danger, but Ethan knew better than to think. They were safe. The Zynth did not forgive, and they did not forget. The rebel ship shot out of the Zynth hangar like a spear of light. Engines roared, the hull vibrating as they broke free from the warship's docking clamps. Ethan gripped the side rail, his knuckles white. The view outside the cockpit window was a blur of stars, the blackness of space broken by the massive shadow of the Zynth flagship. Almost instantly, sirens echoed through the small ship. "They've locked onto us," one of the rebels shouted, their voice calm but tense. Ethan's gaze flicked toward Lyra. She was still inside the pod, the blue glow bathing her face in soft light. Her breathing was slow but steady now. The hum of the machine was a comfort, a reminder that she was still with them. But he knew that if the Zynth caught up, the pod's safety meant nothing. They'd kill them both. The rebel pilot jerked the controls sharply. The ship rolled, diving between 2 jagged asteroid fragments drifting in the void. A beam of red energy from the Zynth cannons tore past, close enough to heat the hull. Ethan stumbled but caught himself. He'd been in combat before, but never in space. Out here, one wrong move was the difference between life and a silent death in the cold. The rebels moved with practiced precision. One manned the rear cannons, firing bursts of blue plasma that lit up the darkness. Another scanned the incoming fire patterns, calling out enemy positions. Ethan felt the strange sense of being in the middle of a war he didn't fully understand. Yet somehow he was part of it now. A low beep came from the pod. Ethan's head snapped toward it. The lid hissed, and a small cloud of mist escaped. Lyra's eyes opened slowly, blinking against the light. For a moment, confusion filled her face. Then her gaze settled on him. She didn't speak, but the faint tightening of her fingers around the pod's edge told him she knew. She knew he had saved her. The ship shuddered as another blast hit nearby. The pilot swore in a language Ethan didn't know. "They're gaining on us," the rebel gunner called out. "One more hit to the rear shields and we're done." Ethan looked between the rebels and Lyra. They were fighting for her too now, even without knowing why. He couldn't just stand there. "Tell me what to do," he said to the gunner, stepping forward. The rebel tossed him a small, compact weapon with glowing blue vents. "Keep their fighters off us." They replied, "Aim for the engines." Ethan slid into position at the secondary gun controls, the targeting system lighting up before him. Through the viewport, he saw 3 small Zynth fighters closing in fast. He squeezed the trigger. The weapon kicking with a deep hum, a bolt of blue plasma streaked forward, striking the nearest fighter and sending it spinning into darkness. 2 more remained, weaving through the asteroid debris. Ethan fired again, missing the first but grazing the second. The rebels' main cannon roared, blasting another out of the chase. Only 1 remained. Still pushing toward them, Ethan waited, watching its movements. When it came in for the final strike, he fired. The fighter exploded into shards of glowing metal, drifting into the void. The pilot didn't slow. "We've got a jump point ahead," they said. "Once we're through, they can't follow." The stars ahead began to stretch, bending into thin lines of light. The ship's engines screamed as they poured everything into speed. For a brief moment, Ethan felt weightless. Then the stars snapped back into place, and the view outside shifted calmer, emptier, safe for now. The alarms went silent. Ethan leaned back, the weapon still warm in his hands. Lyra was sitting up slightly in the pod, her eyes never leaving him. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. No words, no shared language, only an understanding. Whatever came next, they were in it together. The rebel ship drifted through quiet space now, far from the burning shadow of the Zynth warship. The air inside was calmer, the hum of the engine steady and low. Ethan sat across from Lyra, who was no longer inside the pod. She was wrapped in a thin silver blanket, her silver eyes steady on him. Her face was still pale, but there was life in her gaze again. Life that had nearly been stolen hours ago. One of the rebels moved between them, placing a small container of water into Lyra's hands. She took it slowly, drinking in small sips, never breaking eye contact with Ethan. The silence between them was heavy, not awkward, but filled with unspoken things. She finally spoke in her own language, soft and careful. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he felt the meaning in her tone. It was gratitude, and something else, something deeper. One of the rebels, a woman with a scar running from her jaw to her ear, stepped forward. "She says you risked your life for her," the rebel translated. "She wants to know why." Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because I couldn't watch someone die when I could stop it," he said simply. The rebel passed the words along, and Lyra's expression shifted. Her eyes softened, but there was a flicker of surprise too, as if such an answer was rare in her world. The pilot called from the cockpit. "We'll reach the rebel fleet in 10 minutes, they said. "Once there, the Zynth won't be able to touch you." But Ethan knew that wasn't true, not completely. The Zynth didn't give up. If they had gone through the trouble of torturing Lyra, she had to be important, maybe more than she had told anyone. As if sensing his thoughts, Lyra leaned forward. She spoke again, slower this time, choosing her words carefully in broken human speech. "War? Bigger than you think," she said, her voice low. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we're going to need more than just running." She nodded once, a small but certain gesture. The stars outside began to shift, a sign they were entering the rebel fleet's hidden sector. Through the viewport, dozens of ships appeared, sleek, silver, and sharp. Ethan felt the ship slow, surrounded by allies he didn't yet know. The rebels inside moved with relief, But he felt only a strange mix of calm and anticipation. He knew this was not the end of the fight, it was the start of a new one. Lyra's voice broke the silence again. "You save me," she said. "Now." "I save you." Ethan didn't smile, but a small spark lit in his eyes. For the first time since his capture, he felt like the war might not be hopeless. The battle for survival had made them allies. But what was coming next would make them something far stronger, far beyond the safety of the rebel fleet. The Zynth flagship turned in the darkness. Its engines flared, and in the command chamber, an alien officer studied a glowing display. The human and the alien woman had escaped for now. But the chase was far from over.